All right, picture this. It's 1889. We're in McCook, Nebraska. The air is bone dry, the hills are dusty, and life is moving strictly at the pace of a horse-drawn buggy. Today, in this explainer, we're diving into a deeply moving piece of historical fiction. But here's the kicker. It's based on a real, documented family lineage. It's this incredible story of sheer determination that really perfectly captures the essence of frontier life and, those unbreakable family bonds. Let's just dive right into it.
So let me ask you something. What would it actually take to make you travel 2,000 miles entirely alone? And I want you to really think about the visceral reality of that for a second. We're talking no interstate highways, no commercial flights. Cross-country travel back in the late 19th century was a totally daunting, physically exhausting ordeal. Now imagine taking on that grueling journey all by yourself as a 45-year-old woman in that era. It was almost unheard of. And yet, as we'll see, some motivations are just so powerful they instantly override any kind of logistical fear.
To get to the bottom of that motivation, we really have to start with the catalyst. It's early August, and a letter arrives. Let's try to ground ourselves in the sensory details of the moment. Just imagine, young Tommy Reed, he's this local kid making barely 2 bits a week delivering mail down Main Street. He walks up and hands an envelope to our protagonist, Abigail, or Abbey Smith. Now, she's right in the middle of baking. She literally has to stop and wipe the flour off her fingers just to open this thing. It's this incredibly mundane, everyday domestic scene that is, quite frankly, about to be completely shattered.
Now listen to the raw desperation in these words from her daughter, Della. Della is all the way out in National City, California. That's near San Diego. And she's expecting her first baby. She's terrified. And on top of that, she's completely isolated. Her husband, Austin, he's a good man, but he's stuck working at the mill, literally from dawn until dusk. So Della has absolutely no one to sit with her. No one to ask all those burning, scary questions a young woman really needs to ask her mother. I mean, the panic in her words is just palpable.
And, well, that brings us to the massive elephant in the room. 2,000 miles. It's a number that just hits you like a ton of bricks when you consider the context of 1889. I mean, communication alone took days, sometimes weeks. The travel itself was perilous and endlessly long. But for Abby, sitting there at her kitchen table looking out at those dry Nebraska hills, the contrast between that painfully slow reality and her own immediate, unshakable resolve to leave is just astounding. She reads the letter exactly twice, folds it up, and boom, her mind is entirely made up. No hesitation. So let's look at the first hub of this story, a son's hesitation. The very first major obstacle she faces is actually her own family's reaction. Abby marches straight over to the McCook livery stable. She finds her 26-year-old son Davy up in the loft forking hay down. Now Davy's practical. He runs the local livery stable better than just about any man in the county. He climbs down the ladder, wiping his hands on his trousers, and he immediately senses from his mom's tone that something monumental has just happened.
And what unfolds right there in the stable is this brilliant clash of perspectives. Davy throws out all these highly logical, logistical fears. The sheer distance, the literal months she's going to be gone. Who's going to tend to the house and her husband? But Abby, her maternal instinct completely steamrolls his logic. She tells him point blank that the house will keep. Della is the one who needs tending to right now, not the house, and definitely not the fully grown adults living inside it.
When Davy incredulously asks if she seriously plans to take the train cars all that way completely by herself, Abby's response is just fierce. She shuts down his protective hesitation in a heartbeat, reminding him, "Women travel alone every day, Davy. I am 45 years old, not an invalid." She's a frontier woman. She's already crossed multiple states in her lifetime. And Davy, recognizing that immovable mom tone from his childhood, finally caves. He immediately shifts gears from resisting to supporting, agreeing to help her map out all the complex railway connections so she doesn't end up stranded on some random platform in Colorado. That brings us to the second hub, a daughter's understanding. Later that exact same afternoon, Abby heads back home and finds her 23-year-old daughter, Matey. The whole family's kind of winding down for the day. Matey's just sitting out on the front step in the dying daylight, peacefully shelling a basket of peas. Abby doesn't even bother sitting down. She just stands there. Della's letter is literally still burning a hole in her apron pocket and drops the news that she's leaving for California before the baby arrives.
Matey's hands completely freeze right over that pea basket. She instantly starts doing the exact same mental arithmetic that her brother Davy was just doing. She's calculating the thousands of miles. She's tallying up the long months her mother's going to be gone. She's picturing the empty chair at their dinner table. But here's the difference. Unlike Davy, who went straight on the defensive with logistics, Maddie's reaction is deeply, deeply emotional.
In this beautiful moment, empathy just totally overrides fear. Maddie looks up and says, "I'd want you if it were me out there alone." It's incredibly resonant, right? Maddie is fully acknowledging the massive gaping hole Abby's absence is going to leave in their daily lives, but she selflessly sacrifices her own comfort and her mother's presence for the sake of her sister's safety. It's just this incredibly touching, quiet moment of female solidarity.
All right, the final hurdle, the third hub, a husband's blessing. That night, Abby sits down by the lamplight to write to her husband, DJ. Now, DJ isn't in McCook. He's actually weeks away out managing cattle and horses at their ranch near Wanu, Kansas. Because of the sheer distance, they can't just have a quick face-to-face chat. Abby has to rely on the painfully slow written word to convey this absolute, unshakable decision she's made to leave the state.
The letter she writes is so carefully justified. She anticipates all of his objections right off the bat. That it's way too far to send a woman alone. But she counters it with this absolute moral clarity, basically saying, I could never forgive myself if I stayed here, comfortable in Nebraska, while our daughter is laboring completely alone 2,000 miles away. And honestly, what makes this part of the story so agonizing is the wait. In 1889, there are obviously no text messages. Abby has to wait 5 long, nerve-wracking days just for this letter to be forwarded to Kansas and for a reply to finally make its way back to her. And when DJ's response finally arrives, it is incredibly short, incredibly blunt, and absolutely perfect. He simply writes, "Go to her." He echoes Abby's exact sentiment that, hey, things at home will keep just fine. Now, to an outsider, it might not look like a letter of great, flowery romance, but it reveals this incredibly deep, unspoken understanding that you only get from a 28-year marriage. He completely trusts her judgment. His only request is that she wire him along the way so he knows she didn't, accidentally fall off a train in the mountains.
So here we are, the climax. Departure to the west. Everything is set. It is a crisp Thursday morning in mid-August. The scene is the bustling McCook Depot. You can hear the train whistle sounding way down the tracks. Davy is driving the buggy, bringing his mother to the start of a journey that's going to take her so far beyond those dry Nebraska hills.
And listen, this was definitely not luxury travel. She was bringing just the absolute bare essentials. A single trunk rope to the back of the buggy and a small carpet bag to keep with her on the train. But the detail that really gets me is the parcel of dried apples and biscuits. Maddie presses this little bundle of food into Abby's hands at the very last second on the platform. It's almost like she just couldn't bear to let her mother board that train without giving her a physical piece of home to carry. It's a deeply emotional goodbye, complete with Davy enduring a very public kiss from his mother with that sort of embarrassed patience that only a grown son can really muster.
Ahead of her lies a truly daunting geographical reality. We're talking 3 to 4 solid days on the train cars. Leaving the McCook Depot, navigating all the chaotic connections in Denver, chugging over the towering Rocky Mountains, and riding all the way to the Pacific Ocean. To ease the minds of her kids who are just standing there watching her shrink into the distance, Abby makes one final loving promise. She swears she is going to send a wire from every single telegraph office between Nebraska and the ocean.
So, what does this all mean for us? While we've been exploring a piece of historical fiction, remember that it's deeply anchored in a real, documented lineage and the very real, very frustrating technological constraints of 1889. The steam trains, the telegraphs, the weeks of travel. Sure, all of that is completely changed, but the core of this story, that fierce, unyielding, totally protective instinct of a parent who is willing to drop absolutely everything and cross a continent for a frightened child, that is a universal truth. That never changes. So the next time you're looking into your own family history, ask yourself, what 2,000-mile journeys, whether physical or metaphorical, did your own ancestors take to ensure you are exactly where you are today?